Okay. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone, wherever you're from. I hope we are all doing well. Welcome to the second webinar series of the Liberty Sparks After webinar series, where we discuss various sectoral issues, different topics surrounding the African Continental Free Trade Area, and we're able to dissect how various sectors play a role in achieving the AfTA and how we as young people, older people, private businesses, public sector can play a role in its achievement. So I will introduce myself first, and also we have a panel of very well-versed speakers in the field who will be able to help us get down into this topic a bit more keenly. So just to begin, my name is Modesta Lin. I currently reside in Kenya, and I will be your host for the webinar today. So just a brief overview of Liberty Sparks. Liberty Sparks is a think tank that is based in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And its mission is to improve and promote individual understanding on economic, social, and political liberty, while emphasizing public policies, as well on free markets, individual rights, limited government, as well as property rights, and also increase the impact of education on some of these economical conversations, including the AfTA. Just a disclaimer, the views expressed today, views, opinions, thoughts are solely of the speakers, and they do not necessarily are not affiliated to Liberty Sparks. So we wish to open a forum where we're able to converse, discuss, ask questions, seek clarifications over the topic of today. So today we are discussing the role of technology in the achievement of the African Continental Free Trade Area, and we'll be able to look at the different ways technology can be able to achieve the objectives of the AfTA, and how the different opportunities are present to be able to achieve the objectives, while also giving an opportunity for different stakeholders to be able to grasp onto these opportunities. So I want to give an opportunity to our speakers of today to introduce themselves. I will start with you, Muoki Musila. Just give us a brief introduction of who you are, where you work, any other information you wish to share with us. And then we'll go to you, Peter Bismark, who's also on the call. Then we can be able to dive right into the conversation. Karibu Muoki.
Thank you so much, Lynn.
Muoki, I don't think we can hear you.
You can't hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Okay. Microphone. Yeah, like I was saying, I need to Kenyan. So basically, one of really opaque counting African continental free trade area. Can better agreements. Yeah, I'm hoping that it's something better.
Okay, thank you, Muoki. Although I think there's an issue with the mic, we keep losing you and having you back on, so maybe we'll try that again at some point. So thank you for the description. Then we'll have you, Peter. Maybe you can give us a brief introduction and also where you're from before we dive into it. Karibu. Sorry, you're muted.
Right. So can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Right. So I'm Peter Bismark. I'm from Ghana. I work with the Institute for Liberty and Policy Innovation. equally a free market think tank in Ghana. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, and welcome to the conference. Thank you again for taking your time to be part of this conversation. So I think just to be able to start, I want to be able to give a brief history about why we chose the issue of technology. I believe Africa has been one of the booming areas in regards to technology, especially digital technology. And I think this was some items that were mentioned in the last webinar when we were talking with a few speakers on the AfCFTA and its how it will meet its objectives. And one of the key discussions was about digital technology. So some of the aspects that were brought up was the money, digital money transfers. I mean, we have M-Pesa in East Africa, Fast Mobile in areas such as Nigeria. And then when it comes to aspects of even agriculture, we have the M-Farm and Twiga in Kenya, which have been leading in having some of the rural farmers have a way of getting to the urban consumers. So such platforms have been on the increase. We're looking at marketing. Some of us use Jumia actually here in Kenya. We're looking at aspects of transport when you talk about little cab, Ubers all around. So we wanted to highlight how we can be able to leverage on this and be able to look at how some of these technologies can help in the achievement of the AfCFTA's objective. So I just want to start this conversation with you, Peter. So just to be able to hear from you, and I think we'll also come back to you, Muoki. And I love the fact that you're from different countries. So you'll give us, Peter, you're from Ghana, and you're able to give us an overview of how the Western African bit works. And also Muoki can give us a bit from Kenya, can give us a bit about how East African works. So just we want to hear from you, Peter. How has technology impacted trade in Africa over the years? So not just looking at now, like how has it been over the years in regards to technology and trade? And how do you see it impacting or playing a role in the AfCFTA? So maybe I can start with you, Peter, then we'll come back to you, Muoki.
Right. So thank you so much, Lynn. I'm grateful for the opportunity. I think I didn't hear your last statement of the question. I'll be happy if you could repeat that so I could pick it up from there.
That's okay. I just wanted to find out from your opinion how technology has impacted trade in Africa over the period of for longer period of time. So from way before, after independence to now, and how do you see it playing a role in the AfCFTA?
All right, so that's an interesting question. So maybe we could start from pre-independence, especially in Ghana, where Ghana had been the first country to obtain independence for others to emulate the actions taken from against the British in Ghana, and other countries are taking those similar actions to be independent. Internet penetration since then had been quite impressive because the penetration rate is moving at a speedy rate across West Africa, East Africa, the Northern Africa, and then the Central Africa. But the Northern Africa had been much of a higher speedy rates, even though they are often on the last position when it comes to economic freedom index. Because look at Libya, for example, has been the least and most less freedom country in the world. But when it comes to internet penetration, there are about 94% internet penetration rate in Libya. And Libya is the only country in Africa that has that huge percentage as compared to other African countries. I think followed by Algeria also in the north with about 83%. And Kenya in the east is about 85%. So it tells you that to some extent, yes, penetration rate is getting better than before independence and as well as after independence. And in trade, you know, we used to trade without internet, where we cross borders, we cross seas and rivers in search for form of hunting and barter trading. But as technology has taken center stage now, it is also adding to the value when it comes to trade. The figures are not all that estimated well across the globe because we have not implemented digital trade so much that it could give us accurate data across the continent, which is very important for this discussion because AfCFTA can be very successful in our current contemporary dispensation. We have to have internet taking place and technology also driving the entire ecosystem. Because Africa do not produce much, or we have less manufacturing companies producing large quantities of millions of products for its members to consume, we are very good at what we call the e-service, or we can say that electronic services. So if you look at what is happening currently, you will see that most countries within the sub-region are communicating. We are using Zoom through internet. It means that you can send a transaction right away as we speak, and then mail these transactions through our emails and have access to them, sign them or endorse them physically and send them back to you. So once the numbers are going up in terms of penetration, stability is also becoming something very important in the space, which the stability rate has not been quite measured, though the penetration rate is very high. So AfCFTA is the primary option for us to use to drive technology. It's the prime option to increase penetration of internet and also increase stability of internet on the continent. If you look at Nigeria, for example, though Ghana and Nigeria are very close neighbors in terms of we being ruled by the British, we do everything in common. Trade between Ghana and Africa, Ghana and Nigeria hadn't been that much of internet. Apart from few remittance platforms that we exchange monies, we do not often provide services across borders, which is quite difficult on the continent for us. But in all, I would say that penetration has been very massive, and I want to endorse that. If penetration hadn't been that massive, we didn't have even Chad with about 17 million population, having close to 650,000 Facebook subscribers, obviously have a high penetration rate of about 223,703% increase over the past years. So it tells you that Chad is even adopting Bitcoin because of the thing that there's a penetration rate of about 13%, which is a quite boost for them of a population of 17 million. So I think that we have made some progress, only just quite not enough. But after, we'll have to lead the tech adoption, tech usage, ICT tools for tech transfer of e-services and products, transportation, communication, and others. I think AfCFTA should be the lead. But in all, I will talk about the penetration as the best ever. But we haven't done so much well when it comes to products exchanging across borders using the internet. And AU is doing so well with some kind of the e-commerce protocol they are coming up. They are coming up with other tech protocols which could help. Only that African countries should not do this individually. They should do that with the blocks, and they should do that with the AU. So when I say the blocks, I mean the Eastern Bloc, the Western Bloc, the Central Bloc, and the Northern Bloc. Then they integrate that with the African Union's tech system or tech protocols. Then you have a single digital market that would drive AfCFTA's success. Other than that, we could be just the sayers and not the doers.
Thank you, Peter. And I think that was a very good start to the conversation. I mean, we're looking at aspects of internet penetration. I think I've never really been able to consider that, especially when we're talking about technology transfers and also how to leverage on the blocks. In terms of the Western blocks, we already have some of the trade blocks that are already in place and how to be able to leverage on that when doing technology transfers. I want to come to you, Muoki, just to hear what your feedback is on the same conversation. How do you see the history that has been? How do you see technology playing a role in the AfCFTA as well?
Okay, no, I hope that you can hear me now clearly.
Loud and clear, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So looking back 10, 20 years ago, I would probably not be able to sit at home and order food, or request for some shopping from the supermarket or something like that. And for me, when it comes to trade and technology, I like to look at it in that particular aspect, in terms of us being able to gain some efficiency, in terms of me as a consumer and a business person, trying to connect much at a much better pace, within real time, and basically being able to enhance business. And for me, for the business person, maybe being able to make those sales, and for me being able to get the goods and services, that I have. So what has technology done for the African trade? Of course, number one, I always think technology is all about reducing costs, the cost of doing business. For as a consumer, now that you don't have to do the physical movement to the shop, or rather to the store, to be able to acquire the particular goods you want. Looking at it from the a business person's perspective, it's all about efficiency. It's all about being able to reach a wider market. Just from the internet. You compare from 20, 30 years ago, where you have to, the only option that you have is to sit within your shop and be able to wait for their customer, but you don't know whether they are on their way or not. So that has been one of the greatest achievements of technology, in terms of business people and even consumers being able to have that efficiency to transact. Of course, when you look at technology in terms of maybe being able to trade from one country to another, we've had like you said, in the East African context, we have M-Pesa. I know Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and maybe Burundi, which I'm not very sure. But M-Pesa, it's all over, and it's so easy for me, to be able to connect those two aspects of trade, being able to do the mobile money transfer, and be able maybe to access a merchant through e-commerce platform, like you said, with the Jumia that you have. And I mean, what is more beautiful than being able to buy a product from Rwanda when I'm in Kenya, without having to move and spend a week, spend a fortune to be able to access maybe a good that is produced from another country. So I think it's become very easy and cheaper to conduct cross-border trade. And I believe it's contributed very much to opening up the market in Africa. And when the cross-border trade, I believe that it's something, it's something that we are hoping that the trade agreement is going to make it much better for us, because there are a lot of regions. Maybe, for example, in Africa, for someone like me in Kenya, I might not be able to maybe sell something in particular markets in Africa, in as much as we are talking about technology having made it a bit easier. And of course, we've also been able to participate in the global value chains. I want to believe that technology, has not only made business easier for us to trade as Africans. Also, I want to believe that we've been able to even out of Africa, out of the African continent, we've been able to increasingly become part of the global value chains. We Africans basically. E-commerce platforms like Amazon are not inherently African. Alibaba, all the way from China, and we are able to do all that kind of business. Getting products and supplying, other continents, other markets outside of Africa. And I believe those are some of the benefits that we've been able to get, for continuing adoption and use of technology. And I believe, it's one of the areas that we can continue to expect that, as the free trade agreement continues to open Africa, as you continue to, countries continue to cooperate in terms of doing business, you're going to see more of that. You're going to see, technology coming into play and facilitating a lot more efficiency, a lot more cost reduction, and for us being able to trade better across Africa and maybe outside of Africa.
Thank you, Muoki. And although I had a bit of questions to follow up, but especially when you say about the aspect of the new forms of technology whereby you get to access some of these products from the comfort of your home, and there's this debate that goes on about how now that has led to consumers being given that what's the word, the cost of transporting. So it's been moved from the producer to now the consumer, but that's a debate we can continue having. Just a disclaimer to the participants, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat box, tell us where you're from, and feel free to also ask our panelists any questions as the conversation goes on. I think I wanna, and this is something that we've been able to highlight in one way or another in the first question, the first point of conversation. We've mentioned different technologies and how they've been leveraged on in the continent. I just want to expound more on this, just to be able to understand what are these technologies that that Africans and different stakeholders can be able to leverage on to enhance trade facilitation through the borders of Africa, in regards to the AfCFTA. I think at some point, Muoki, you touched on this, and also Peter, but I just want to dive deeper into this, just to be able to understand what are these technologies, how are we able to leverage on them. And I think I want to start with you, Peter, and then we'll come back to you, Muoki, just to be able to understand further on this. Peter, go ahead. You're muted. I don't know if you can. Yeah. Peter, kindly unmute yourself. You can't. Perfect.
Right. So there are lots of interesting ICT products that are enhancing both intra-trades, international e-commerce, as well as cross-border data transfer, which are really impacting to some extent, having a tool on how AfCFTA should function. Yeah, so you guys mentioned that of the M-Pesa, which is quite an offline transaction. You don't need the internet to transfer money using the M-Pesa, if I'm right. We also have a similar one in Ghana called the mobile money. In short, we call it the Momo, which you can equally also send money without the internet. These tools are very important because to some extent, you don't need huge internet data that could cost you extra to send money to the other. So this is something we are really enjoying, an offline transaction in Ghana and other African countries as well, just like the eastern part, which is more prevalent as compared to the western and then the central part of Africa. We have to also look at the importance of the remittance system. It's improving currently. Initially, most African countries do what we call receivers, that cannot send any form of money to another country. So I may live in Ghana, I can't send money to anyone in Kenya. I can't send any money to anyone in Tanzania. The Western Union, the MoneyGram, the RIA, all forms of money transactions, we are just receivers of that. Yes, it's true, but currently there is this flatware, there is this blockchain forms of digital transfer of money. Binance has also improved transfer of money because have ever sent money through Binance to someone in Kenya and someone in Nigeria. And this is another adapt to what we call tools, our ICT tools, enhancing transactions, because I gave a contract to someone in Kenya to work on it for me, He did it, sent me through email. Now I have to pay the person. I do not have the remittance platform to do that, apart from using the blockchain, which really enabled that transaction to take place. So blockchains are also coming to enhance faster remittance of monies across the countries, irrespective of which currency you are using, which is one of the biggest troubles we face in Africa, because of the difference in currencies, it's quite difficult to send money to, Kenya in shillings, if I'm right, that's the name of the money. But we use cedis in Ghana. So these blockchains gives you value for whatever I'm sending you. And you can exchange that on another platform. And you can get M-Pesa for that, which is happening in Kenya, happening in Nigeria, happening in Rwanda, and also going on in currently, Congo has also taken over with important stake pools within the blockchain ecosystem. Now, apart from the blockchain, apart from the M-Pesa, which is offline, there is this upcoming kind of WhatsApp transfer of money from China, which is also coming up in Africa. Nigeria has started adopting that. So I can send you money in a form of message on WhatsApp. So as I send you hi on WhatsApp, I can equally send you money through WhatsApp as well. So all that you need is the internet, just as you need the internet for the blockchain, as compared to the M-Pesa, which is offline. So if the WhatsApp is also bringing in a kind of revolution, tech revolution, a form of innovation where I could send money through WhatsApp, that would also facilitate trades on the continent or enhance transactions, which I could give contract to someone in another country, complete the contract, give me feedback, and I think I could send money to the person. Now, moving away from the part of the transactions or the monetary part, we can also look at the others of education and health. Importantly, we have pharmaceuticals across the various countries on the continent. Now they produce products. Some of these products could be either genuine or they could be fake products or falsified ISBNs and other kind of codes. Interestingly, there's this kind of M-Pedigree system that can authenticate products produced on the continent, irrespective of whichever country the product is coming from. So M-Pedigree is enhancing drug authenticity on the continent. And the AfCFTA is not only about just trading in farm products or manufacturing products, but pharmaceutical products are also part of it. And if we don't authenticate these products from one country to the other, we'll be having fake products or fake pharmaceutical products going into other countries to feed and kill people. So you can see that this tech has come to help in authenticity and to also enhance what we call the AfCFTA, because trade in pharmaceutical product is part of AfCFTA. And only that we do not have a huge protocol to enhance such pharmaceutical products from AU. But this is very key as a stepping stone for AU to even come in with its digital system when it comes to FDA, Food and Drugs Authority, to authenticate product that comes or that moves from one border to the border to other border. Apart from the pharmaceutical aspect, we have the education. Education is something we all have to ensure that we leverage on with technology, and we are doing that. There are interesting online products. Individuals are participating across the continent. There has been courses I have taken right from Nigeria. Even this important program we are organizing is part of education on AfCFTA. So already there exists some of these important tools in education, in health, as well as in remittance or transactions of monies. And then interesting part of the blockchain, which is also bringing in a different revolution. So we are already leveraging on it. What we need to do more is to deepen the digital trade part of it. Finally, there is the wave of what we call the digital currencies of central banks. I know Nigeria has what we call the e-Naira, which was launched some few years ago, just for digital transactions. So this also help in transacting across borders using government-owned digital tokens. Ghana is also piloting its own ECD, which is also produced by the Central Bank of Ghana legally. Chad already has adopted what we call a Bitcoin. So as a legal tender in Chad, even though they have about 30% penetration rate. Now, this is also will help in facilitating transactions on the continent with AfCFTA, because we use different currencies. I can't send you CD in Ghana and you will send me shillings in Kenya. but Bitcoin is Bitcoin, which other countries are really adopting. So I think these are simple tools. You mentioned Jumia, you mentioned other forms of, I think I mentioned the Flutter Wallet as well, which is also already in existence. I know Ghanaians and other African tech specialists are also putting up their own forms of social media with high security content. They are also looking at the privacy issues. Other countries are also working on cyber security to ensure that these transactions are highly safe, secured, and serve as a huge form of data transfer and data accuracy in measurement. So I think we are really on track. Only we have to ensure that such digital trade or transactions and digital forms of health facilitation and catalyst should have a rich central point where authentication becomes so easy for the players involved, whether private or government, and as well as to also ensure that the taxes of some of these transactions will be highly reduced, because in 1998, during the World Trade Organization ministerial conference, from documents, there was this what we call the common practice of tariffs imposed on electronic transactions across national borders. Now, they decided to ensure that some of these tariffs are tax-free or tariffs-free. They did that, but that thing is obviously going to end in 2019. I don't know if those things are still in place. So what Africa also has to do is to also ensure that these forms of transactions across borders could have what we call tariff-free given to some of these important transactions to reduce cost, because cost would take people out of such arenas and then go into other illegal means of transacting money on the continent, which will not serve the purpose, because foreigners will not be happy to invest in anything about trade on after if there are so much kind of fraud, abuse, and poor cybersecurity infrastructures that could help authenticate issues for transparency's sake. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And I think there's so many new examples, and I like how you've touched technology in the different sectors. I mean, the aspects of healthcare, pharmaceutical products being digitalized, the aspects of digital currency, the e-Naira, I didn't really know about that. I think these are very good ways of looking at the different technologies that are available for us. And I want to get to you, Muoki, just to be able to hear now what technologies you see that we can be able to leverage on, just to add on to what Peter has said.
Okay, thank you so much, Lynn. Yeah, I think Peter's touched quite a bit on blockchain technology. Maybe I can add on that is in terms of the transparency, and technology can help us a lot deal with fraud, because in as much as we are moving, into the digital, into the technology-enabled business aspect, we expect also a lot of fraud is going to come up. So yeah, blockchain is great in terms of creating tamper-proof records, ensuring that we have how do I call it, a chain of a clear chain of in terms of money movement, documents movement, and so on. And yeah, so I believe that blockchain is going to be great. And the other thing Peter has mentioned maybe was about the digital currency. I don't know about Kenya. I remember in 2022, back last year around February, we had a discussion paper by the Central Bank of Kenya, trying to get the views of Kenya and of Kenyans in terms of introducing a digital currency. And I'm hoping that we're going to be getting more on that and can maybe catch up with our African brothers and sisters from West Africa. I hear that they've adopted quite a lot. As someone who has in the past, bought a product from Nigeria, and I had to go to the bank. I had to provide a lot of documentation. I had to provide information about the person I was sending money to. I had to tell the bank how I know that guy, for how long I've known them, what to do. And I had to take, I believe, 24 hours to be able to complete that transaction. And when I paid for that product, I discovered the cost of getting that back from Nigeria to Kenya was even more. It was almost double, than compared to the cost of the product that I was buying. And those are some of the complications that we've been having in terms of cross-border trade across Africa. Due to technology, we haven't had the advantages that are coming on board because of these electronic money transfers and blockchains. But Peter Bismark already covered much of that. So I want to look into other different aspects of technology that I expect under the free trade area agreement are going to facilitate better trade. And for me, is number one is on electronic customs systems. Technology can be used to digitize some of these customs procedures, and enabling business to submit declarations and any other documents that are required electronically. So I expect that that will be able to reduce much of the physical interactions with the custom officials that we have. For those of you maybe who have been able to move from one country to another, by road mostly. I've done that in Tanzania and Uganda, and you realize that you spend a lot of time, maybe an hour, 2 hours at the border, for every other business person. Maybe if you're in a bus, trying to be clear whatever they have, and cross-checking all that system, which tends to take up a lot of time. And I hope that with the adoption of our electronic customs systems, I may be able, if maybe exporting something to another country, I'm able to do all that clearance from, the comfort of my office, and be able to, by the time my product gets to the border, it's a seamless experience. It's a matter of, checking on the computer systems or wherever, any issues with compliance and people being able to do that. Another thing, maybe electronic payment systems. Of course, as we do business, like Peter had mentioned a lot, differences in currencies, foreign exchange costs that businesses incur, and we are looking at for maybe traditional banking services, maybe to be able to adopt some of these systems, and for me to be able to to transact with my business partner or my customer from another country across Africa, we'll be able to do these transactions on a real-time basis, without basically trying to eliminate the middleman, that is the banks that we've been having. So I'm hoping that we can continue to see more and more of that in terms of better transactions. And I want to believe that having this electronic payment system brings the small and medium traders, because you find that the cost of transacting in the current arrangement that we have, mostly it tends to exclude the small businesses from being able to maybe do business across borders. And I hope that electronic money transfers can be able to eliminate that inconvenience that we've been having. Of course, another aspect maybe is on electronic trade documentation. I think things like bills of landing and certificates of origin. Maybe I'm hoping that all these systems, all these processes can be automated, and we can be able to improve that efficiency, reduce the issues with costs and time that we're having, and also, try to reduce fraud, and much of the errors that we have, when it comes to the physical handling of documents across borders. The last thing that maybe that we can't forget to mention is on e-commerce. There's so much beauty for me to be able to order a product from Ghana, to order a product from Cape Verde, to be able to supply a customer in South Africa, without basically having to even interact them physically. And that is something that has been brought by these e-commerce platforms. We know about the Amazon, we know about Alibaba, and so on. Of course, brands like Jumia have been in our market, and of course, we've heard the challenges that they've had in most markets. And I'm hoping that the agreement can be able to improve on some of these aspects of doing business, and when we get to a point that Africa can have our own e-commerce platforms, that originate from Africa, run by Africa, and we can be able to do business better, and we can be able to access that culture, those products that we are not used to seeing in the domestic and the local markets. Yeah, and I believe it's a thing of beauty to be able to rely on this technology to improve these efficiencies, and reduce some of these errors and challenges that we've been having as Africans when trying to trade with each other. I don't understand why it should be so easy for me to acquire a product from China, from Europe or North America, and yet it becomes so challenging for me to be able to order a product from Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you, Muoki. And I think I like among your last statements where you said we need e-commerce platforms that are for Africa and by Africans. And I think that's something that's very crucial when it comes to technological development, that we develop technologies or create forums of technological advancement where it's for Africans and by Africans. And I think this is something that's really crucial in our technological advancement, and also in applying the objectives of the AfCFTA. I want to lead us to a different conversation, a little negative. And I want to read a comment by one of the participants.
So Lynn,
yes?
I would like to touch a bit on what Muoki mentioned about the e-commerce, which is important for AfCFTA.
Okay.
There's AfCFTA e-commerce protocol already existing at the African Union. That protocol has just the potential to ensure that countries in Africa should set up what they call the Data Protection Authority. So they are looking at how they could protect data across the continent, which is important. They have no problem with that. But the biggest issue of the AfCFTA e-commerce protocol is that countries or governments of the various countries do have no restriction. Okay, they have the freedom to access business source codes. So it means that if I have built my own business, an e-commerce business, the government should be able to access the codes using running that kind of business, so that they will look at the various kind of transactions done over the period, and obviously it will tax them. And when the taxes are becoming quite heavy and the regulation becomes a burden, some of these important businesses will be living out. So AU, after e-commerce protocol, shouldn't just focus on the fact that you set up protection authorities, data protection authorities to regulate and burden individual businesses. Jumia is doing so well. Jumia could have done more than what it's doing, just because there are a lot of hurdles when it comes to data protection and government's inability to ensure that these businesses expand beyond what they have been doing and create more innovation. So e-commerce is important for the continent, for AfCFTA, but the AfCFTA's e-commerce of the African Union is one-sided and looking at taxing lots of some of these e-commerce. there's e-commerce in Ghana called the Tonato. That e-commerce has collapsed in Ghana. They wanted to leverage on to other West African countries. They couldn't. So Gigi, there's another platform called Gigi. Gigi bought that kind of platform and they are running it. And Gigi is equally facing challenges, which I don't know if they could be able to expand into other African countries. So e-commerce is important and the primary part of running after, but its protocols are becoming quite restrictive for businesses to expand on the continent.
Thank you, Peter. And this I think this brings us another concern when it comes to some of this developments that we're already seeing. Some of this, and I think this is also part of the conversation that we're heading towards, the negative effects of some of this digital innovations that we're having in protocols as well that we're developing. And I think I'll come to you, Muoki, and then we'll come back to you, Bismark, just to be able to explore this. But first, I want to be able to read this comment by Kevin Ongera, who's starts by, thanks Lynn, great conversation, had missed such. Digital money, or rather tech in economy in general, is a big step towards free trade. We just hope the current barriers in place, such as different currencies or different countries, are worked out soon on for our good as Africans. Suspicions about technology brought about by ignorance is a big impediment to technologizing trade. Sorry about that. So I think this brings us to a very good conversation. Technology is good. I think we've been able to have that discussion for the past few minutes. But then, you know, there's a few challenges here and there, and I think I want to just hear from you as our speakers and also from the participants further. Yes, we're talking about e-commerce. Yes, we're talking about protocols. Yes, we're talking about innovative technology, digital payments. But what challenges are we also looking at when it comes to such key ingredients in technology for the after? And how do you see us mitigating such? I mean, Kevin has clearly put suspicion about technology. We're talking about ignorance. We're talking about different currencies. So how do you see some of these issues affecting technology use in regards to the after, and how do you see us mitigating it? We'll start with you, Muoki, and then we'll circle back to you, Peter, on the same.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. I believe that I had touched a bit on these potential risks. You know, as technology becomes good in protecting some of these interests in trade we have, the guys who want to benefit from that illegally or otherwise are also becoming sophisticated. So we are expecting to have a much clash of that. And really, I don't think that it's a question of expecting to, because we are already there. You know, there are so many issues in terms of data, in terms of people being hacked. I believe in the last 1 month or so in Kenya, we've had so many complaints on social media in terms of people, or rather bank clients who've lost their money. You know, maybe they got a phone call from so and so, and maybe you are told to press so and such keys on your phone, and by the end of the day, your money is gone. And yeah, so that is the biggest challenge, you know, that I foresee that we have as a continent, and that we have to deal with, which is cybersecurity risks. You know, it's a whole broad aspect of the risks that you can have. You know, hacking, ransomware attacks. You know, the attacks maybe to deny you particular services, that the data breaches and so on. And you realize some of these cybersecurity issues will be targeting you as a consumer. We'll be targeting all these technology and technical systems that we are talking about. You know, the government's having. These attacks will be targeted towards service providers and businesses. So it's one of the major threats that we expect, and this calls for collective action, you know, from every other stakeholder in this landscape. It's about the government, it's about the business owner, it's about the consumer or the customer to be able to, to take those particular steps, and be able to mitigate these risks. Of course, these stakeholders will need to invest in cybersecurity measures, having secure systems, the periodic auditing and checking of their systems to ensure that there's no intrusion. Maybe in terms of having firewalls, in terms of encryptions, in terms of having multi-factor authentication systems in place. So we will need all that this collective action from every other stakeholder. It's the business person training their workers, to take the very first steps in terms of the very simple things like you don't click on suspicious links. You don't click on these enticing links that we have. If it's your kicker, how often does your employer updates on such electronic devices, your USB devices, your phones, and so on. So it's a collective effort that we have to be able to take as a people, as Africans, as consumers, governments, all the stakeholders in this platform. And maybe if I can point out that the Africa, the Continental Free Trade Area it's one of 15 other flagship projects. So maybe because this one is touching on business, maybe we've been able to focus so much on it, and we are forgetting other 14 flagship projects and the Vision 2063. And number 13 on the projects is on cybersecurity. And maybe if I can read what the African Union Secretariat says. The decision to adopt cybersecurity as a flagship project of Agenda 2063 is a clear indication that Africa needs not only incorporate in its development plans the rapid changes brought about by emerging technologies, but also to ensure that these technologies are used for benefit of the African individuals, institutions, or nation states, but by ensuring that data protection and safety online. So I hope that as nations, as the private sector, as business people, as consumers, as we continue to put our mark on the free trade area agreement, we can also be able to focus on the cybersecurity flagship project, and we can be able to implement the various measures that it recommends, so we can take a step further towards mitigating the issues that come with the cyberspace. Of course, those who want to look at the 15 flagship projects, you can always look at the African Union's Secretariat. They have all that and the documentation. Of course, you can be able to read further on that. Yeah. So that is, for me, that is the major issue that we have at the moment. And maybe if I can also point on the digital divide that we have. One fact that you cannot deny is that we have a lot of inequality in terms of adopting technologies, in terms of utilizing these technologies between countries. I want to look at something like mobile money, with the M-Pesa. M-Pesa came first in Kenya, and it was quite a long time before the same system could be adopted in Uganda, could be adopted in Tanzania and other East African nations. So I want to look to imagine what is happening across all the states in Africa. Maybe you look at something like e-commerce. There are some nations which are much better adapted or evolved in terms of appreciating online shopping. Let me use that particular terms in terms of online shopping. Because why? Because maybe the regulations are a bit better. maybe because as a consumer, we have accepted that, there's that trust for you to be able to trade with someone you have not seen, you are not even sure whether the product you are being sold exists. So yeah, there's that particular digital divide, among African states, and truly, I can only hope that we'll be able to do enough to advance and to ensure that the African Union and the agreement, the free trade agreement, and maybe the states and maybe the private sector, we can all do our part in promoting digital inclusion, in terms of investing in the infrastructure, in terms of looking at the regulatory frameworks that we have for us to be able to facilitate this trade, such that I don't have, if my country's goal is so good with let's say with e-commerce and the online shopping, I don't have a problem trading with someone from Chad or from North Africa. So that is what I'm looking in terms of a gap that exists among African states that we have to be able to bridge. We have to be able to deal with these digital divide and try to see that we can converge at a point that works for us as Africans, that enables us to take advantage of these technologies, and that we can be able to have something for us, something that works for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Muoki. And I think if there's one thing you've really insisted on is the digital divide. And so it's a new terminology for me, so I had to Google it. So yeah, just to be able to understand, it says here it's a term referred to the gap between demographics and regions to have access to modern information and communication technology, which now makes sense since you've said we already have different groups have different technologies and different capacity of it. So being able to bridge this gap is a key ingredient in also mitigating some of the issues of technological access in the trade. And also thank you for the reminder of, I think we've concentrated so much on the AfCFTA, which is true, and that's part of our objectives with the AfCFTA. But just to be able to leverage on other flagship programs is a key ingredient in making this AfCFTA process really work, and also the end goal, for all of us to achieve Agenda 2063. I want to come back to you, Peter, just to be able to hear what your opinion is on this as we round up with the last segment of this.
Right, interesting. So Muoki has made important points on the negative part of the tech and other flagship important programs. We also have to leverage on to ensure that the success of AfCFTA is measurably achieved. Yeah, so what we also have to understand is that most ICT products on the continent are quite suspicious or vulnerable to a lot of cyber attacks. Most of our phones we use on the continent are vulnerable. So the issue of trust was talking about, the issue of trust, not necessarily between two individuals, but the issue of trust on the gadgets, the kind of phones we use to transact or do business on the continent is really a huge setback. So we have to equally look at the kind of tools we import onto the continent, the kind of ICT tools we import onto the continent. Because of you see that most of the tools we import onto the continent have been nationalized. They are not, so I can say that they are largely more of national, not scale of the continent. So when it happens that way, I could have an iPhone here. The iPhone to some extent could be used within the space of where I live, unless I'm using roaming even on my own continent. I have to use roaming on my own continent. Now, using roaming on my own continent also comes at a cost, which if I'm in Kenya, I'm in Tanzania, I'm in Uganda, I'll feel reluctant to do business through using my phone. It's because of vulnerability of cyber attacks on the phone. So I don't know if you'll be experiencing that. People are being hacked on WhatsApps. People are being hacked on Facebook in Africa. through our own phones, through even the laptops we use. You know, so the fear of even having what we call a credit card, where you have your money on it, about $2,000 to $5,000 money on your card, will you feel that comfortable? Will you be convinced to use that to do business on the continent? It becomes so difficult. So the tools we import had a huge vulnerability to doing business on the continent when it comes to AfCFTA. So I mentioned that the AfCFTA protocol, initially never thought of technology. If you look at the whole write-ups, we were focusing on single market, single market, single market, and then the value of the single market, $1 trillion, $3 trillion. You know, that has been the advocate that when you have a single market, we are going to prosper as a continent. But we didn't look at how we could bring together the other tools, including technology, and look at the vulnerability of the tech tools we use on the continent, so that we don't become those that we would always not have the interest to do businesses with people in Kenya, because I'm scared that if I transact something, it could be hacked and along the phishing websites are roaming all over Africa. To some extent, on authority, there are a lot of white guys even coming into Africa to dupe and hack Africans and take their monies away. It's happening. There's digital marketing things happening, referral codes given to people, and they are hacked at the end of the day on the continent. So the zeal, the energy, the enthusiasm, and the confidence having the cybersecurity infrastructure on the continent is quite not safe for some of us to use. So that's why if I want to use, I'm going to use the blockchain instead of using the usual platforms that we use. But we should also understand that. The major success of AfCFTA will be how countries adapt, use, and invest technologies and its connectivity on the continent. When I started my conversation, I mentioned the stability, the penetration rate of internet on the continent. But we do not look at the stability rate of the connectivity of internet on the continent. So if you've been to Sierra Leone before, they have internet. You'll be told, yes, there's internet. But the internet cannot be stable for even 30 minutes or an hour. Within some few minutes, like on Zoom, I have to go off and come back again several times, disrupting every kind of online activities. So there are times you will see a Sierra Leonean on Facebook after 1 week because the internet is not stable. Now you could also find someone from a country like Chad, Niger, Central African Republic, not being able to use these tools properly because stability isn't there, but there's penetration. So penetration shouldn't be an event. We shouldn't be touting, we shouldn't be proud of the fact that there's higher penetration, but we should be proud of the stability of the penetration of the connectivity of the internet we have on it. This will be the most important part on the integral part of payment systems, because you cannot have payment systems running with poor stability of the internet. Then the success of AfCFTA will be delayed, because currently AfCFTA will be driven by technology, and there's no way out there. It will be driven by technology because cost of transportation on the continent is very expensive. Muoki from the beginning mentioned that I'm going to do business in China that we're doing business in Africa. And it is true. If I want to come to Kenya today, I have to spend close to about $900 from Ghana to Kenya. The same $900 will take me to India, will take me to Dubai. And with Dubai, I could even get a change on that. I could even use $700 to Dubai and back. But I have to use $900 from Ghana to Kenya, or from Ghana to Uganda, or even from Ghana to Sierra Leone. I might use about $700 from Ghana to Sierra Leone, which is nearby. If I want to go to Nigeria, I have to spend about $500, which I can top up with just $200 and go to Dubai or Qatar, or go to China or India and do business there in Indonesia. The stability of contract, a lot of contracts from China. Okay, why? Because in China, I can easily communicate, and you could send me product or samples of product for me to have a look. So send even samples. So if Kenya is producing certain tools, certain products, certain manufacturing products, and I want Kenya to send me samples to have a look and then establish a business contract, I mean, you may not have the means unless you use DHL, which DHL works more outside the continent than on the continent. And remember, DHL is also a private-owned company. So for me to do that, I'd rather go for sample from China and leverage on the samples and establish a contract and product and get my goods into the country. So easy. Again, most African countries, to some extent, do not even leverage on the important technology tools. I mean, Ghanaians and other Africans are innovating. No, we say that we have the talent on the continent. You have the talent on the continent. You have the talent on the continent. Ugandans are producing cars. I mean, they are using scraps to produce certain vehicles. I know Kenyans are also doing similar. Ghanaians are doing similar. Nigerians are doing similar. However, these tools or these innovations coming from Africa, we do not have the environment from which these tools could be adopted to enhance trade, to enhance security, and to enhance internet stability. Because the AfCFTA is only looking at revenue mobilization instead of trade facilitation. AfCFTA is only looking at revenue mobilization instead of national security or country security. Now, trade comes into use trade for trade liberalization, or you use it for national security or continental security. In Africa, our case is different. We cannot use technology as a form of revenue mobilization for government, but we should rather use the technology as a way for trade liberalization and for national security and for safety, because when there's national security, there's safety. There are a lot of border disputes on this continent. Moving from one continent to the other, a lot of border disputes, because there are the perception of countries certain borders because of the natural resources there. Recent confrontation with Cote d'Ivoire for an oil within the border. As we speak now, Nigeria and Cameroon are still fighting. Congo and Angola are still fighting. Eritrea and Ethiopia peace deal has not been that kind of concretized. You see, so technology will be the only means to do e-services across borders, since I cannot travel across these borders because of the border disputes. So if AfCFTA do not sit on the umbrella of ensuring that there's broadband connectivity, there's e-commerce, there's high integrated payment system of trust, there's that integrated digital identity of systems where I can be identified if I'm moving from one country to the other without asking me to swap my passport somewhere, do the ABCD for verification. Sometimes system failures even delay businessmen at certain airports on the continent. And these frustrations prevent people from enhancing or going into other forms of businesses on the continent. There's this, what we call the robotic and AI enablers, which are equally driving beautiful trade activities across Europe. Look, Europe has 43 countries, okay, 43 countries. They have leveraged on technology in such a way that they minimize revenue mobilization and maximize trade liberalization and the use of technology for job creation, for business development, and for trust. What are we doing? Our focus on the continent is to raise revenue. That is why, as we speak now, the data authority, the data protection authority in Nigeria and other countries are all looking at how they could raise money in conjunction with AU's protocol. Congo is doing same. Kenya is also trying to set up a similar institution. Ghana has already set up that institution. It's left with them to integrate with ECOWAS and that of AU for revenue mobilization. Look at piracy on the continent within our water bodies. How do we use technology to fight piracy? Okay, look at the terrorism, look at the conflict on the continent. How do we use technology to mitigate some of these factions or belligerents on the continent to enhance trade? I will not trade in a country where there's conflict. I won't go there because I will die. You get it? So technology is now the most important tool for after success. Otherwise, we can't grow, and we can't grow when regional integration and digital economy boom has been left out and concentrating on putting out structures to grow their revenue. That wouldn't survive. AfCFTA wouldn't survive with revenue mobilization from AU. I won't do it. This is why e-trade, or what we call electronic trade, or digital trade on the continent is very low. Very, 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 very. I don't remember the last time I did anything with even or maybe transacting something apart from communication on WhatsApp to join this important program. You see, so Africa has a lot of things to do in terms of the ICT product that we bring on the continent. We don't have to import anything at onto the continent because we think they are trash in other countries, but they become beautiful and wonderful goods on the continent. The whole trade agreement and the effect of e-commerce on the continent is all about technology. So I don't see why we should be interested in what we now. There's something called e-commerce taxation on the continent by AU, e-commerce taxation. And the e-commerce taxation, they are looking at the South-South trade agreement. And that South-South trade agreement is about Africa. And they are looking at how digital trade rules could be used to enhance revenue mobilization for the African Union. As we speak now, African Union even do not have offices in their own continent. So there's no African Union office in Ghana. There's no African Union office in Chad. There's no African Union office in, I don't think there's Kenya, you have one. But there is European Union office in almost all the African countries. The European Union is a block on its own. AU is a block on its own, but AU do not even have an office in the European Union. But European Union has offices there, and they are facilitating trade, which I think the second part of which we'll be discussing. But to me, I think that we have a lot to do with the gadgets, the tools we import onto the country that serves as spies on us instead of helping us to facilitate trade, facilitate or use the tools to enhance digital trade or e-trade or border data transfer for accuracy. That will help us grow as a continent and expect the prosperity we are expecting from after. Other than that, we may be the continent always trying to fight corruption, because in 2017, European Union said they are ending corruption on the continent. But the funny thing is that how can you end corruption when the very people who are corrupt in their various countries pledge to end corruption? It doesn't work that way. It will not work that way if you also want to enhance trade on the continent with a perception of growing your revenue. Countries that raise taxes on their revenue or e-commerce, they never succeeded. And after you move away from using technology to raise revenue than to using technology to liberalize, to enhance trade and security on the continent. When we do that, we are going to succeed. And this hacking situation, the use of digital identity will be good. I don't think we have what we call business passport on the continent. Applying for a business passport on a continent digitally is difficult. Even digital passport is quite difficult, quite expensive. Muoki was talking about business registrations. Look, most countries' business registration systems are not operated in Ghana. They are not operated on a continent, or they are not manned by the country's IT specialists. Most business registration ecosystem, when it comes to e-business registrations, most of African countries, we send our data outside for protection. So when the systems of those countries go down, obviously here you'll be told that you cannot register your business in 2 days or 1 week. That will extend and give you number of days before you can bring in or you can go in for your certificate, because we cannot create our own data systems that will enhance or facilitate the indispensable production input of many industrial goods, as well as certification and licenses for what we do to grow. So as a continent, after would be great if digital trade reduces transaction costs, facilitate participation in global value chain as well as continental value chain, and improves market access and reach. With the market access, it's important, but because there are border disputes, we can only reach the market through technology. So if I want to reach a Kenyan market, I can reach it through Jumia. That's the only platform now, or Gigi. And other important platform which is coming up, I did mention it earlier. So if you want to improve and reach huge markets and have that single digital market, technology is key. But the ICT tools and products we bring must have certain standards to boost our confidence and enhance transactions on the continent.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Bismark. And I think I think it was the passion with which you spoke about the current issues and just how much issues that are aligned to technological development in Africa. You talked about resource conflict. I mean, no one would want to trade in an area that has conflict issues. Even as we develop issues of cybersecurity, we also need to also develop security on the ground to be able to have such trades be able to develop just as much as we develop the technology in it. I think such this is a good way to close the session. And just before I give you a chance to give your final remarks as speakers, I want to just read this comment by Stephen Dansu, who says, when it comes to technology, there are equally good, likewise bad aspects. Notwithstanding, AfCFTA must be open to adopt and utilized effectively and inefficiently the AI systems to promote to positively protect trade across Africa. This will promote trade liberation. AI is that's a whole Pandora's box that if we open now, we'll never be able to close, and time is not on our side for now. I just want to say a big thank you to our speakers for taking the time and passionately speaking about this conversation on technology, the role of technology in the AfCFTA. And I want to thank you for the different insights and also how you've been able to align the different sectors, including healthcare, conflicts, cybersecurity, e-commerce as well. And I just want to give you a chance to maybe give us your final remarks just before we close this webinar. I'll go to you, Muoki, and then we'll finish with you, Peter. And in case there's anyone who wants to leave a comment before I close the webinar, please put it on the chat box. But go ahead, Muoki. So what is your final comment? What is your final advice based on this conversation?
Okay. What do I say? What do I have to say? As individuals, of course, as we continue to adopt technology, we can expect that a lot of new skills, a lot of new knowledge in terms of being able to utilize the technology, and at the same time being able to take advantage of the technologies that we have. So we have to expect a lot of that, and mostly as a young people, this is our opportunity, to try and to penetrate, to be part of the growth that this free trade area agreement is about to bring into Africa if all goes well. So I'm only hoping that we can be alert, we can be conscious enough to recognize the opportunities in the way that we can be able to, to take advantage of the technologies that exist already, to be able to acquire that knowledge that we are missing at the moment, to be able to bridge between, the skills that we are getting from the universities and the real skills, that the African, market and job market jungle requires at the moment. So it's only my hope that we can be able to do that. And I'm hoping that states and majorly the private sector, we can do a lot in terms of collaborating and try to bring forth laws, regulations that are for the African people. Peter has already mentioned the obsession with states and in terms of capitalizing from this agreement, making money in taxes and whatever. But if the African Union and African states are genuine about using this particular framework to help the African people, it should focus on much of how do we do business? How does that unbanked person in the village take advantage of these technologies that we have? How does that SME owner be able to compete on that international level and with the large scale businesses? So it should be all about improving these efficiencies, improving access to markets and finance, gaining much more transparency, and doing something in terms of providing that infrastructure. We've already said that me as a Kenyan, I might be so hopeful because I see where Kenya is in terms of adopting technology, and moving with the current digital trends. But what about the other African countries that I'm expected to trade with, that I'm expected to sell my products or buy products from them? How are they doing? So yeah, this is such a big divide that we have to do. Every other person has to be able to do their part. And ultimately, I think it's about communicating the AfCFTA. Recently, I think I wrote an op-ed article on how every other African nation, can try to communicate about what this framework is, how the common person comes in, how the private sector comes in to ensure that it is implemented successfully. So it's all about how we communicate to them. It's all about how the African person, the basic African consumer trader gets to understand this framework. They get to understand how it helps them, gets to understand the benefits that they get it. But if we limit this framework, to the boardroom and the policymakers, it's going to end up like all the regional trade agreements that we've had in the past, some which existed way before I was born, and to date I still don't see much of the benefit that they brought. So thank you so much, Lynn, for hosting this session, and I hope all of us can, put our mark, try to write something, try to record something on TikTok or whatever, emphasizing on what needs to be done in terms of making this framework to take off and for us to begin seeing its fruit. So thank you so much, and our audience, thank you so much for joining us and listening to us talk so much for over an hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Muoki, and thank you for insisting on the different leveraging opportunities for the youth, financial institutions, public sector, private sector. Also, we'll get back to you, Peter. Maybe you can give us your final comments on this discussion.
Right. So what I want to say is, if we cannot trade physically, you cannot send goods across borders physically, we should be able to trade digitally. And digital trading is important in this regard, looking at the tech innovations we are experiencing on the continent and beyond. And through that, we could say that we could also have what digital markets for AfCFTA. So AfCFTA shouldn't be that of saying that we have a single market, but we do not have a single digital market. So if we cannot trade physically, we should be able to trade digitally. And this could happen when the African Union, governments of various countries, the private sector, which is key to AfCFTA, because AfCFTA belongs to the private sector, not from governments. The government really have to set rules for us to go through the process and enhance standardization and trust. They should look at how to invest in digital transformation through the support of tech innovation coming up on the continent from the universities, from the fintech communities, from the telecommunications, the products we are importing. Such investment should be meaningful, tailored towards AfCFTA, so that we will have a digital economy or a digital AfCFTA market, if only we cannot send the goods across borders. Thank you.
Short and sweet. Thank you so much, Peter. And I just want to say a big thank you to all our speakers. Before I forget, I think this is something that will also help in my end speech passe. So Doreen Albalwa says, very informative session. Keep up the good job, team. As we think of technology let's also think of a just transition. Thank you so much. So she's from Kenya. I think this is an aspect that we'll also be able to have a conversation on in regards to green growth and transition as well when it comes to AfCFTA. So I want to say a big thank you to our speakers today. You have been a lovely set of speakers. You have been informative and very passionate in the topic of the role of technology in achieving the AfCFTA. And I want to give a big shout out to our participants who've been very engaging, different comments, very educative, as well as a listening bunch. You've stayed for 1.5 hours, which is quite a long time to be on Zoom. I think all of us can agree sometimes technology, in as much as it's a very good tool, can be a bit draining at times. But I want to say a big thank you for staying through and being very interactive and engaging as much as possible. So feel free to follow our social medias, Liberty Sparks, on Twitter, Instagram, as well as Facebook, where we will be able to share some of the links to the conversation today. So we have this webinar series, and we'll be able to share the links to the conversations, so the recordings as well. So follow our YouTube for that. It's at Liberty Sparks, and you'll be able to find videos of past webinars as well as current webinars that is part of this series, as well as the one that we've just had today. And don't forget to follow us on our social medias. For the speakers, feel free to share your social media handles so that the participants can be able to follow through in case they have any questions or they want to interact more with your content. But a big thank you to every single one of you for taking the time, for interacting, for educating, and for learning as well. From Liberty Sparks and team, we want to say asante sana, and have a good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Bye, everyone.